It's question time at Alhambra Investments, and we are still trying to decipher the things that happened after the election a week ago today. And Joe, Steve, one of the things that we've seen is a surge in small caps. I mean, they're just blowing the doors off. So, Joe, what's happening? Why is that?
Well, I suppose the thought process is, and look, this is small caps did surge after the election. They've outperformed the S&P 500 after the election, uh, but I'm not sure it's. I hesitate to say it's just because of the election. I guess is a good way to put it. This started back in July when small cap started to outperform. In fact, the small cap indexes, and there's several indexes you can look at, but it doesn't really matter which one you look at. Small cap indexes since July 1st have basically doubled the return of the S&P 500. So, and if you look over the last year, actually, small caps have outperformed the S&P 500, which is, I think, something probably most people don't even know. Um, but I guess the thinking after the election is that, well, the Trump administration is going to impose tariffs, and that should benefit companies that are domestically oriented. And those would tend to be smaller and mid-sized companies, I suppose. We do know that multinationals obviously have income coming from overseas, and there could be various reasons why that gets affected. But I don't know that that really applies as much to small and mid-cap companies as people think it does. Almost every company out there, well, not every company, but a lot of companies out there, uh, they have to import either parts or intermediate type goods and end up going into their final product. So if you have tariffs on foreign on imports, it's going to affect them too. So I think you got to be careful here when you look at this. I mean, if you maybe there is somewhat of an advantage to small and mid cap companies, but I don't think it's as big as people think it is. I would just prefer to look at it on a case by case basis. I think that's a better way to look at it and say, hey, these companies or this industry is going to benefit, or this industry, this sector is going to benefit more than another. And we really haven't done a lot there except to look at retail, where we know that companies that do clothing, for instance, are gonna get some kind of hit unless they get some exemptions, because almost all clothing is made overseas now. So that's an easy one. Everybody knows that one. When you get into some of the other ones, I think it's going to be a little more difficult to figure out. So we're not even close to figuring that out yet.
Steve, one of the things that's happened since the election is a lot of uncertainty has been removed. How does that play into markets?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, and I'm going to speculate that that's might be some of what's going on here. I think just to step back a bit, easier answer is in the second half we saw a broadening out. We've really kind of seen a return to a more normal investment environment that maybe isn't going to be concentrated in just a few big caps and mega caps and all the performance. And I think for sure some of that's going on because we've seen it be beyond just small caps, wider market participation. Again, a more normal kind of interest rate and environment that we've had that was really different from that kind of weird world we had post 08, where you can expect caps, stocks with different caps performing well. So I think that's kind of maybe the easier analysis to do here. Maybe the more interesting one and more speculative, it goes to that uncertainty question. I do think the reshoring trend is real. I do think we're going to be rebuilding some industrial capacity. Some of that just has to go with demographics that China really is aging out. We're going to have to build more stuff here. And I think that it does benefit some of the smaller caps, some of the more domestic oriented here. And I'd speculate too that, how we do it, some of those questions, some of them got answered. Maybe we're going to do it with a bit more tariffs. Maybe we're going to do it with a bit less industrial policy. Maybe we're going to do it some sectors than other sectors. Maybe we're going to do it with not such a heavy hand on regulation. Um, and maybe some groups with lobbyists, right kind of lobbyists are going to benefit, and some with not so much of the right kind of lobbyists are going to benefit. So I do think some uncertainty about how we build out the domestic economy's been removed, and maybe that kind of gave a go ahead to some investors to feel better about this. That one's a little bit more speculation, but I think that could also be going on.
Joe, is this small cap surge sustainable? Do you think it will continue after the post-election rally fades?
Well, I think there's some. You got to think about the traditional things you think about when you think about small caps. Look, they tend to be more indebted, so interest rates matter. There's some other things that when you look at small and mid caps that don't have anything to do with the election. I want to come back to that part about uncertainty. I'm not sure that all that much uncertainty has been removed. In some ways, I think uncertainty may increase between, especially, we talked about this before the election that, kind of our, I won't say worst case scenario, but, the case that we didn't like, the one that causes uncertainty is one where you get a sweep of one party or another. And that's what appears like that's what we're going to get. I think there's going to be a lot of horse trading in Congress on this stuff. And listen, what did I just mention about clothing retailers? Are they going to get an exemption on the tariffs? We don't know those things, and all those things. I've said this before. The thing that worries me the most about tariffs and any type of heavy-handed regulation or taxation is corruption, because we know that politicians are going to have their hand out wanting a campaign contribution. You want an exemption? If Gap or American Eagle Outfitters wants an exemption from the tariffs, you're going to have to make a campaign contribution. This is the way it works. And so we don't know how all those things are going to come out. Like Steve said, do they have the right lobbyist? I don't know. So I think that introduces a level of uncertainty that maybe we haven't seen since Trump, left in 2020 or 21. So I'm not sure about the reduction in uncertainty. I think in a lot of ways it's gone up. And just, remember, just because it's one party does not mean that whatever the executive branch sends down to Congress is going to get rubber stamped. I think a lot of people think that's what's going to happen, but man, politicians don't work that way. Especially if you got a thin majority in the House, which is going to be very thin regardless, and probably got a little bit thinner. Remember, Lee Stefanik out of New York is a Republican in New York, and she's going to be going to be, I guess, Department of Homeland Security. They just reduced the Republican majority by one, and there'll be a special election to fill that seat, but it's not going to happen now. So at least for now, that seat is open. So there's going to be, I think in some ways, there may be more uncertainty coming. That's why I think you got to be careful about chasing this rally, whether it's in small caps or large caps or anything, because there's a lot we don't know yet.
Politics and the markets, we'll keep watching.